Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, everybody. I hope you're having a fantastic Sunday at home, chilling out. As you can tell, we're in a pub. And yes, on my right is an extremely regal Patrick Van Straten in an M&S cardigan number.
What the Queen wears.
And to his right, it's a busker who stumbled in. No, it's Chris Hamill in a hat. Disgusting scenes.
Home Alone's turned up, but some of us had to get up at 5:20 this morning to film this mug, this ginger demon play tennis against Greg Rosetsky, which you've probably seen on VFM by now.
Yeah,
so
probably.
I hope you enjoyed.
Wow. Fingers crossed. Anyway, right, let's get straight into it then. First question. Great name coming up. XSS Man, SSX. Brilliant name, even better question. Ooh. He says, if every team had a permanent transfer ban, who would be the best side in 10 years? Paddy Van Straten.
Great question.
Kick us off, mate.
That is a real thing.
Great question.
Yeah, and because it is, I'm going to go really obvious. Like, Barcelona, the first name that comes to
Of course. So
Definitely.
La Masia.
You know, La Masia is an incredible academy. It's still probably the most famous in the world. Obviously, based on the Ajax one. Ajax would have a shout for this as well.
Yeah.
But they've got that 4-3-3 drummed into them from an early age, and there's a path to the first team. You know, we've seen people like Sergio Roberto is now making a difference to the first team. Rafinha, who I think's already got 5 goals this season in about 80 minutes, like some ridiculous record.
Suarez and Neymar, though.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't have Suarez and Neymar. That's undeniable. But on the other hand, they probably wouldn't have let other talent go. So Mauro Icardi came through the academy.
That's ridiculous.
Thiago, Hector Bellerin, Alex Grimaldo, Thiago Motta came through the academy. You know, there's a huge amount of talent there, and they do give those guys a chance. So, you know, in 2010, the 3 nominees for the Ballon d'Or were Xavi, Iniesta, and Messi, and all those guys came through the academy.
Wow.
That same year,
filth.
Spain won the World Cup, and 6 of their starters in the final were La Masia graduates, and there was another one on the bench. So I think that Barcelona are a pretty strong shout for this.
What about you, Christoph? Who would you go for?
Well, mate, that was a pretty emphatic answer from Pato, but I reckon I'd have to pluck on Bayern. They've got players
so boring, man.
So rude. They've got players like Lahm, Badstuber, Alaba, Muller, Hummels, who have all come from the youth team and are now established world stars. You've got young players, like the likes of, as I said, Alaba. You've got Kimmich, Koeman. You've got Renato Sanchez, who could feasibly still be there and playing at the top of their game in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
Who are in the squad now, not just as youngsters, but also, again, established stars. It is ridiculous. We talk about the conveyor belt of Barcelona, but Bayern, they have these people are little pet projects for them, aren't they? They take them, and they run with them. Kimmich, especially in the early stages of this form, was displacing the likes of Xabi Alonso, Arturo Vidal at times. He was scoring a goal a game, which is something new that he's added to his game this season. And they've always got a plan.
They do.
They've always got a plan. They tried to employ Nagelsmann, I believe, from Hoffenheim to run their reserve team a few years ago.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
They put a big charm.
They've got a great eye for talent. This guy's taken Hoffenheim from relegation candidates to third in the Bundesliga now, and there's only 2 teams more in form since he took over, which is Bayern and Dortmund.
That is ridiculous.
So Bayern.
I'm going to go, you 2 boring bastards, I'm going to go, little left field shout here, the underdogs is Chelsea.
Oh, that little known team from London,
Chelsea.
Chelsea.
Yeah.
Well, I know you say that, and the path to the first team may not be as clear as the likes of Bayern and Barcelona, but their pool of talent is filth. Remember a couple of seasons ago, they had about 40 players out on loan, and about 35 of them were in the Eredivisie. Honestly, they're fantastic.
Bertrand
They've got young players in that side. Bertrand Traore out on loan.
Solanke.
They've got Tammy Abraham out on loan. Dominic Solanke out on loan. Nathan Ake still at the club. They've also got players that are already there. The likes of Kurt Zuma under the age of 24. They've got Thibaut Courtois under the age of 24. Loftus-Cheek. They've got a massive pool of talent. And they just need some way of getting them into the first team, and this could be the way.
Yeah, I see a transfer ban as the only way.
Michy Batshuayi, though, they've already bought him. You know, if transfers ended tomorrow, then they'd still have a guy who's going to be a great striker.
They would just recall everyone and have a quality batch of youth players. They really would.
Has there been a team in the last 10 years that's failed their youth? A youth team that's won these FA Cups on a consistent basis.
5 out of the last 7 FA Youth Cups.
Failed them in terms of progressing them into the first team.
Oh no, absolutely
Man
not.
United have as well.
Man United fail massively, although our youth setup has come under question a lot in recent years. But going back to Chelsea, they consistently let their youth down. They've got such a strong team there. Farming them out on loan every single year can only work so far. It has to get to a stage where you're putting players in the team, and you started to see Antonio Conte do it this season actually.
Definitely.
You started to see the likes of Nathaniel Chalobah get a game a little bit more. So hopefully, progressing forward, you'll start to see more Chelsea youth players get a game under Antonio Conte. And if this was to happen, they would be exceptional. But what do you guys at home think? Who would be the best side in 10 years? Let us know in the comments below. Next question comes from Leleni Kaiser. Probably pronounced that incorrectly. He says, who do you think, lads, is the best midfielder ever to play in the Barclays Premier League?
That's a difficult question from the Football Daily family.
There's only one answer. It's Paul Scholes. Obviously, Paul Scholes.
Yeah,
the guy was a genius. He won everything there was to win, both domestically and on the European stage. He was failed internationally. He was part of probably one of the Premier League's greatest ever teams in just the midfield too. That is so rare to see nowadays. He could go forward, he could go back. He had an unbelievable passing range. You've obviously heard the stories about Cristiano Ronaldo being unable to hit a tree from 50 yards. Scholes, he steps up, does it first time. The guy could put a ball on a 50 pence.
He's still doing it now.
Yards.
That video that went round with the gongs.
Exactly. It's ridiculous, his ability. Yeah. And I think the testament to it is when you look at what other players and other professionals have said about him. Zidane said, and Pirlo all said that he was the best midfielder in the world at a time they were playing. You look at the likes of Xavi and Iniesta, they both said after that Champions League final that they studied Paul Scholes at La Masia to find out how he played and how he worked. I think that's testament to how unbelievably talented he was and how unbelievably the likes of England failed him.
Very few players in the world run the tempo of an entire game.
Exactly, and he's also ginger. And he was one of them. Paddy Van Straten, who are you going for?
I thought about Patrick Vieira.
Yeah.
It's my heart. But actually,
of course,
I'm going to go for Yaya Toure.
Of course he is. Anyone who will listen. I've had this conversation with him before.
And ginger. Yaya Toure, I've never seen a midfielder who had as broad a skill set as he had in the Premier League. Paul Scholes wasn't as good as him defensively, and also in his early career, Paul Scholes played as an attacking midfielder, and it was only when he moved further back that he became one of the best players in the world and one of the best players actually I've ever seen. Yaya Toure was actually capable of playing all these. He played as a centre back at Barcelona at a certain point, and he was incredibly good defensively. He would burst forward. He also had a phenomenal shot from the edge of the box, much like Scholes. But he could play as a number 10 as well. He even played up front at certain points. The second time that City won the league, when they needed a goal later on in games, they'd bring on a defensive midfielder and they just push Yaya Toure up.
He was incredible, wasn't he?
He's unbelievable. He scored 20 goals in the league in the 2013-14 season from midfield. I've never seen a guy who could do as many things as well as him, and the only guy, I kind of hope that Pogba can do that as well. Pogba is the guy who I look at him and I think you could do so many different things so well. So in terms of breadth of skill set,
have that skill set, I
have to go for Yaya Toure, one of the greatest African footballers of all time.
He used to just be able to unlock small sides. Then the last kick of the game, you just knew he'd score if he hit from 20 yards.
He'd be standing at the top of the box and they'd pass to him and you'd think, oh shit, here it comes.
Hamster in the corner in your hat. Who are you going for?
In my hat, I'm pondering, because you've got the likes of Kino, Vieira, as you've said, Alonso, Makalele, Giggsy. But if we're talking about the player you wanted to be as a young fan, the player you pretended to be on the field when you're playing football with your mates, it has to be Stevie G, mate. Steven Gerrard.
What are you talking about?
Love that Roy the Rovers narrative, mate. He loved a cup final. He loved the big occasion, which can't be said for a lot of players, a lot of club legends, i.e. Thierry Henry. Pat, how many goals did he score in a final?
Mate, shut up.
Yeah, I just thought I'd come at you, bro. So,
what did he win? Literally everything. Yeah, did Steven Gerrard win a title, mate?
Mate, he won the Mickey Mouse treble. No, but genuine box-to-box midfielder, scorer of great goals. Actually, did get 26 on the wing, on the right wing, didn't he? Very flexible, very dynamic. Rafa Benitez changed his game. He played in the midfield with Mascherano and Alonso.
That's mental.
So many
salivating.
Diags on the
Diag central, mate. 40-yard raking balls. Yeah, he was Mr. Hollywood, wasn't he, in terms of his playing style, but not the greatest technician, but loved watching him.
And then he got sent off against Man United in his final season. That was amazing.
That's how you go out,
mate. That was my favourite Gerrard moment. Stamped on Ander Herrera.
I'll tell you what my favourite was.
Most unassuming
Slippy
character.
G at Anfield when Demba Ba went through.
Slippy
G. Absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, it's the only thing you've had to celebrate in the last 5 years.
Horrible man.
That's true. Pathetically true. In fact, I'd really like to know what you guys at home think. Who do you think's better? Gonna go Gerrard? Gonna go Yaya Toure or Paul Scholes?
Patrick Vieira, add that.
I'll add Patrick Vieira in there, cheekily. There's a poll up here. You can vote right now. Get him in. Whilst we're on the topic of club legends then, here's one from Ibrahim Aminu. He says, let's assume you could go back to a moment in the history of your club. What would you change about it?
Ooh.
Great question, Ibrahim.
The calibre of questions today.
PVS. What are you going to say, mate?
Well, look, making William Gallas captain and handing him the number 10 was not particularly proud
number 10.
But I think probably I'd go for selling Robin van Persie back in 2012.
That wasn't shambles.
Well, look, he had a year left on his contract, but looking at it now, I just think we should have let him run it down. We didn't get a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things, about £24 million. And that summer we brought in Santi Cazorla. And watching, and you saw how many goals he scored. He had the best season of his career in his last year at Arsenal, with Alex Song providing the passes.
Yeah.
So you replace that guy with Santi Cazorla, and I think that he'd have been phenomenal. That would have been our best chance to win the title in a long time.
Yeah, he was a joke at Man United as well.
Go on then, mate. What about you?
I'm going to have to obviously go. There's only one man really you can go for, isn't it? Sir Alex Ferguson's departure. I'm not necessarily going to go for the time that it happened at, because I think it was the right time for Ferguson to step aside. I'm going to go for how.
So the transition?
The transition was an absolute disgrace. It was completely bungled from start to finish. Manchester United must have known, they must have known that Ferguson planned to leave 2 to 3 years before he actually departed. So, There's no way he went into that season winning a league title and thought, you know, I'm chucking a towel in tomorrow. There's no way. There must have been plans in place. And to end up with David Moyes in the position that he was, getting rid of all the backroom staff, was just unacceptable.
Yeah, axing Mickey Phelan was just stupid, wasn't it?
Axing Mickey
in hindsight.
Carlos Queiroz.
Yeah, Carlos Queiroz, how he got rid of some of the scouts was a disgrace. It just was so badly mishandled. For a club of Manchester United's size and stature, it was unacceptable. But so I would go back and change that.
The one we really want to hear, the history of Celtic. We've actually got a lot of Celtic fans.
I've been getting so much abuse, by the way.
Yeah, deservedly so. You're a terrible bloke. Right,
come on,
if I was to change one thing, it would probably have been Tony Mowbray's employment after Strachan.
He was a shambles.
And then we had Lennon, obviously had some memorable nights under him, including Barcelona, the last European game I went to at Celtic Park. 11% possession, well, doesn't matter, 2-1, Tony what. But, and then after that, obviously, Dyler. So before Brendan Rodgers, who has pedigree, we had 3 managers who arguably oversaw, barring Lennon, probably a little bit harsh to categorise Lennon with those two, a period of stagnation for the club. I think we should have aimed higher and maybe looked to retain players for a season longer, like Wanyama, like Van Dijk, and like Fraser Forster.
Yeah. Fair enough, I think that's a pretty decent answer from Chris Hamill. Next question comes from Miguel Nicolas. This is actually a video question. If you want to get your video questions on screen on this show, send them in to our Facebook page, facebook.com/thefootballdaily. Here it is.
Do you guys think that Arsenal need to make any signings over the transfer window?
Pato, go.
Yeah, as the resident Gooner, I'm going to take this one. Look, I actually think the Arsenal squad's in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
For the first time in a long time, they've got decent depth in midfield, defence, and up front. I think we need to stop complaining about the squad. I think the squad's actually good enough to win the Premier League. There are managers who would win the Premier League with this squad. And so I think that we need to think about coaching issues, we need to think about the way we build play, we need to think about who's going to be the next manager, and we need to stop complaining about the players that we have, because they are good enough.
Wow.
Get a grip is the message.
So. Eat that, Miguel. Eat it, drink it down.
Thanks for sending your question in, mate.
Now we come to our final section then. It's bullshit punditry of the week. Last week it was Alan Shearer. This week it's Martin Samuel of Daily Mail fame.
What's he said, Joseph? What's he said?
Oh dear, he has said that Man United players shouldn't be taking selfies and have become obsessed with social media, and it's harming their game. Oh dear, Martin. Now, two sides of the coin here. I kind of half agree with him, I have to say.
Of course you do.
I do kind of half agree with him. I think there's a time and a place for social media and selfies and dabs and fun stuff like that, and that's potentially in your free time, or maybe even on the training ground you get away with it, but pre, post and during the game is completely unacceptable.
During the game, yeah. I mean, I agree about that.
Last season when we were going to West Ham away,
I'd applaud
and there was a video of Jesse Lingard on the team bus, lying on the floor with the rest of them,
Jesse
laughing,
Lingard
giggling,
doesn't
cackling.
matter, mate.
I was
No one knows
furious.
who he is.
Now I know what you're going to say, Patrick.
He's the English Makeda, mate.
Ferguson wouldn't have let it happen. Ferguson would not have let Jesse Lingard be stupid, little antics.
Well, they're no longer ruled by fear, are they? That might be the same with Jose Mourinho. I can't see many of those antics taking place, like continuing. He talked about changing the culture of the club behind the scenes, didn't he? From the medical department to how they travel to pre-season. So I can't see Jesse Lingard being a.
But it does infuriate me.
But if you sign someone like Paul Pogba as well, you sign him because like he is also a marketing opportunity as well as an excellent player, you know. And so if you then try and stop him, you know, like doing his dabs or like taking selfies or whatever, then you're like, well then we're missing out on something that you've actually paid a huge amount of money for.
I actually have no problem with certain players doing it in certain times, but like I said, pre-game, post-game, no, Paul Pogba, perfectly fine to do it in his time. But if I see Paul Pogba out there taking selfies, like doing this shit before games, I'm getting frustrated if we then go on to lose that game, when he could be focused in the changing room. There's no way Roy Keane would have walked out there and gone, like this. He was lined up, and that's the reason he was so successful.
I don't think Roy Keane should be our role model on this, though.
No, he probably shouldn't.
Yeah,
but
equally, it does sound a little bit like old school journalists trying to like overemphasise the fact they are old school.
Yeah, true,
This
happens a lot at the moment as well,
sort of nostalgic, bollocks.
Martin Lipton particularly deadly at this. Last week he tweeted that formations mean nothing in football. I literally nearly hung myself right there and then. What's the point? Antonio Conte probably disagree. Have you seen what Antonio Conte's done since he shifted from 4 at the back to 3 at the back, Martin? And what do you mean that formations mean nothing? You're an absolute dweeb, Martin Lipton. So that's all we've got time for on this week's Sunday Vibes. Thanks so much for your questions. If you want to get your question featured next week, bang it in the comments now with a hashtag Sunday Vibes, or you can send a video question to our facebook.com/thefootballdaily. Thanks to these two idiots for joining me. Van Straten looking regal. Chris Hamill needs to sort himself out. We'll catch you next time. Unbelievable.